being 20. I don't understand that.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Mondays with Moss.
Hi.
This is Judy,
Yes.
and I'm Moss. At least I think I am. Anyway, Judy, get a little closer or not?
I don't know. How close do you want me?
Let me move my lap. Anyway, welcome.
Okay.
Welcome. We've been doing a series over the last, I think, 4 months or so
Really?
of basically what we've been calling relationship and communication knots and tangles. Things we and other people do to really screw up our relationships and conversations. And I thought maybe what we can do, because we didn't do this last week together, we could just very briefly say which ones we've done, okay?
All right.
We're not going to talk about them, but just to remind people.
Okay.
I think we did comparing,
Yes.
where you're comparing yourself to another person.
Yeah.
Like, I've had it harder. He doesn't know what he's really talking about. I do. So you're comparing, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Then there's mind reading. Remember mind reading?
Yes, I do it all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Where you think you know what the other person is
Right.
thinking.
Mm-hmm.
I like this one, rehearsing while the other person is talking, you're doing what?
I'm rehearsing what I'm going to say, so I'm not really listening to you.
Like, shut up, Moss, time for me to talk.
Exactly.
Filtering, I'm not sure if we did filtering, but this is a good one where you listen to some things and not others. You selectively listen, and when things get uncomfortable or you get bored or judgmental, you stop listening. Your mind takes a trip to the zoo. It just goes away, okay? Then there's judging. You're good at that.
Thank you.
What's
I'm good
judging?
at judging?
What's judging?
Well, I think judging is exactly what it says. I'm sort of evaluating.
Yeah, exactly.
And deciding, I agree with this, I don't agree with that. Why
Right.
is he saying that? That's ridiculous. Yeah.
That's good.
Mhm.
And then there's dreaming, where you're half listening, and somebody says something, and it triggers a thought in your mind, and you kind of go someplace. You go into a fantasy. You go into a
Yes.
memory. It could be a rumination, something negative. It could be a fantasy where it's positive, but you are definitely not there in the room in a conversation.
Right. There are an awful lot of ways of not listening.
I'm sorry, what did you say? Oh, then there's identifying, which is one we're going to do today. So we'll get to that in a minute. Then there's advising, which
Right.
is where,
I think you did that one. I
yeah,
think you were advising me, right?
like let's say
Giving
you
me
have,
advice.
so like you have a problem, and I say, oh, this is what you should do.
Right. I
If
haven't
you-
asked you for your
Yeah,
opinion.
exactly, and that's very annoying. It's
Yeah.
very annoying to give someone advice when they haven't asked for it. And then the sparring, where you're basically, this is the warring couple. It's like Virginia Woolf's, what's the name of that play?
Who's afraid of
Who's afraid of
Virginia Woolf?
Virginia Woolf? You're sparring with each other, you're putting each other down, discounting. Being right is a pretty popular one. Like, if I'm right, I think I'm right, so I'm
Yes.
going to fight for my position, rather than just seeing it's an opinion, it's not a fact. I'm not sure if we did derailing.
No.
Okay, so derailing, maybe we'll get to that. Do we do placating? Oh, which is always agreeing?
I don't think we did. I don't think we demonstrated
Okay.
placating.
So maybe we'll get to that, but
Yeah.
I, not today. Today we're going to do identifying. So remember, we're talking about what we call relationships. Ooh, Laura's on. Laura's listening. Hi, Laura. So we're looking at what do we do to create knots and tangles, like in your hair. You know, you're combing your hair. And all of a sudden, not my hair. I don't have enough. But you're combing your hair, and all of a sudden, oh my God, that hurts. Well, you have verbal hurts called tangles and knots, where people are doing things that disrupt your train of thought, and it jars you. So it's not unusual in therapy, Judy, that I have a couple, particularly with couples, where one member of the marriage or relationship is talking, and the other person disagrees and immediately jumps in, okay? Like, I have one client who has attention deficit, impulse control, probably on the spectrum, a little Asperger's. And what he does is, even when I'm talking, he says, well, excuse me, I don't want to lose my train of thought. And he starts to talk, which forces me to lose my train of thought.
Because you have ADD.
Because I have ADD. I think it's very unfair. You know. So anyway, I've learned to say to him, because he's a guy with whom you need to be very blunt, and we'll talk about this as a technique in terms of dealing with people who identify. So when you identify, it's basically the person takes a thought that resonates with him or her, and all of a sudden they interrupt you in mid-sentence or mid-thought, and they're off on their story, okay? And then they're going on, and they totally forget that you're the one who started the conversation, and they don't come back and say, Morris, I'm really sorry for interrupting. Tell me what you think. You know what I'm talking about? Have you had that in therapy with any of your clients?
I've done it.
You've done it?
Not with my clients, but I know, there have been times I've been in conversations and I have been guilty of doing that.
Yeah. So I think it's a pretty common relationship communication tangle. We get excited, we jump in and we talk, but we don't always appreciate the impact that has on the person who brought up the idea in the first place. This happens a lot in corporate and business meetings. Somebody wants to bring up a subject that's really important, and before you know it, there are 4 or 5 or 6 people interrupting each other, giving them their brilliant ideas, at least they think so, and the conversation doesn't get resolved, doesn't go anyplace. So there are a lot of people sitting there annoyed and leaving the room, probably judging a lot or taking it personally that they've been interrupted. So identifying is you hear something that the other person is saying, and you jump in without really waiting for the other person to complete finish his thought. That's what it is.
Okay.
So the question is, why do people do that? Why do people find it so difficult to have patience, stop, look, and listen? Why do they do ready, fire, aim, and jump in and start talking? What do you think?
Why do they do that?
Yeah.
Because I think there's a piece of it that's just impulsive, you know.
Okay.
This thought comes in where they're identifying with what you're saying to them.
Okay.
Or it reminds them of something that's similar or that they've experienced. And people are impulsive. And so they don't think.
Okay.
They don't stop and think.
Okay.
Wait a minute, I'll be interrupting if I do that.
So,
you have to be very thoughtful
Yeah.
to be a good listener.
What does that mean,
And
being thoughtful?
I think you have to have an awareness of how your behavior impacts the other person. I think you have to have an ability to do what you said, to stop, look, and listen, or at least to stop, to wait until the other person has finished their thought or what they're sharing with you. And sometimes I think it's just enthusiasm.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like you start talking about a restaurant, and then I've been to that restaurant, and I start talking about it. And
Or a movie, or a book you're reading.
Right, anything like that. So I think sometimes it's just the person is just enthusiastic and wants to join.
So it could be, number one, the person is impulsive, isn't aware, so they think, they hear something, and they triggers the thought in their mind, and they jump in, and they're not being mindful. Another time, a person might jump in and interrupt because they're enthusiastic. They feel it adds to the conversation.
Right, I think it's often that.
It's not sparring. It's more like mutual stimulation.
They're not doing it, as with some of the other tangles that we've talked about. They're not doing it in any way to get in the way of the other person communicating.
Right.
They're not thinking about it in that way.
So it's not intentional.
I don't think so.
They don't think, I don't like what Judy's saying. I have a better idea. That's like more like comparing or judging. And they think, they're not thinking, I'm now going to interrupt her and mess up her mind. It's more like, oh my God, that's a great idea. Judy, what do you think about this?
Yeah, it's like there's enthusiasm.
There's
there.
enthusiasm.
Right.
Okay. So there are other people who just don't have the social skill. They never learn the notion that communication comes from a word to commune. Together.
Wow.
Which means a meeting of the minds. So it requires the ability to stop, look, and listen. Say, tell me more about that. Oh, that sounds interesting. Okay. I haven't thought about that. Are you done with your part? So let me tell you what I'm thinking about that. Okay, we'll get to that part in a minute in terms of what to do. Okay. All right, so I read an article not too long ago by Kate Bogard, I think it was in 2016, about 5 ways in which to handle the person who identifies.
Oh, I'm interested to hear.
Are you
What
interested?
they? Yeah.
I got them right here.
Oh, excellent.
I took notes.
You took notes?
I took notes.
Very impressed.
Okay. So one is question. You question. So the other person interrupts. So let's say I'm talking about the movie. What movie have we seen recently?
We saw Spencer the other day. Yesterday.
Oh yeah, yeah.
No, 2 days ago. Yeah.
Okay. So you're gonna interrupt. Okay. I really like Spencer. It reminded me about the Budapest hotel.
Oh, you know what I was thinking about that though? Because
No.
it's so interesting about Princess Diana and all.
Oh,
I learned a lot in that.
Oh, please tell me.
Yeah. Oh. Okay.
What are you thinking?
Okay. Well, the way the movie depicted her.
Yeah.
Was a little bit different. They depicted her as very psychologically disturbed.
Yeah.
At that moment in her life.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Coming back to what I was saying,
Uh-huh.
I found that really interesting. I can see your point.
Mm.
So questioning is, tell me more. Let the person, because if the person's excited about it, they have all this energy. It's like asking a person to hold a balloon filled with air underwater. If you're feeling the energy, you may want to just question, let the person talk about it, but you participate by asking a question.
So you're actually joining
Joining.
the person who interrupted
Exactly.
you.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
I see.
Exactly. And sometimes the law of reciprocity is you might be then more willing to say, well, tell me what you're thinking. What do you think about that movie? Okay.
You have to have a lot of presence of mind to do that, I think.
Yeah, you do.
To
You
move
really do.
away from what you were saying
Yeah.
and move into the arena of what I'm saying.
And not take
It's
it
very
personally.
generous.
And not generous.
Very generous.
It's generous listening.
I think
But it's a
so.
good way to untangle the communication knot.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Yeah.
Another one, just to let it go. Take a deep breath.
Mm-hmm. Go with the flow.
Okay. Let's try that. Try another one.
Right.
Okay, we're moving soon. And I look behind me. You don't have to look. I can see it in our screen here.
Oh, yeah.
I'm throwing away a lot of books. I've had about 2,000 books. I'm throwing them away. I feel like I'm throwing away my
Oh, Moss, I
children.
know exactly what you mean. It's killing me to throw my books away. I have an entire pile that I'm hoping maybe one of our kids would like to take. Hoping against hope.
Mm.
Yeah, it's really frustrating, isn't it?
So sometimes when you let it go, you give her a little rope to hang herself. She
That's
talks.
how I felt all of a sudden.
Yeah, and then she might come back.
Uh-huh.
But sometimes you just let it go because it's really not personal for the most part. People are not doing this on purpose to make you uncomfortable. So we have question, let it go, and then a good one, but this is a hard one for most people to do,
Yeah.
which is to set expectations early.
Can you describe that?
Yeah. So at a meeting, there was a book written once called The Six Hats by a guy named Ed DeBono. And he got really frustrated running his meetings because his managers would keep interrupting. And he started the meeting with, okay, this is the conversation we're going to have. We're going to do brainstorming, which is coming up with new ideas. What are we talking about today?
Brainstorming.
Okay, not critiquing, not judging. We'll do that later. And so are you agreed? Can I count on you to talk with me over the next 15 minutes about brainstorming an idea?
Yes.
Okay. So now, if Judy were to interrupt, I might say to Judy, are you aware you made an agreement
About brainstorming.
about brainstorming? So that's a good idea that you might not like it because it's costly, but we're not doing cost now. We're not doing feasibility. We're doing brainstorming. So you're being
You're reminding me now.
you're being the orchestra leader. You're not letting the percussions, drown you out.
Mm-hmm.
So you can set an expectation.
Mm-hmm.
A third one is, this is a good one. Just keep going.
I mean, talking over me, talking
So
over you.
let's try this. We're going to talk over each other.
Okay.
So I thought that movie Spencer really sucked. It really sucked. Diane was a jerk.
I don't know what you're talking about. It was she did such a great performance. It was amazing. I mean, she sounded exactly like.
I thought Charles.
Diana.
I thought Charles was just squeezed like a lemon between these two women. His mother.
Oh, he was such a jerk.
And Diane.
How could you? I don't understand how you could have that opinion at all.
He was a jerk. Elizabeth was a jerk.
Well, that too.
And Diane was a wuss.
No, she wasn't a wuss.
Oh,
Remember
come on,
that
what are you
scene
talking
in
about?
which she ran and got her boys and everybody was there? She wasn't a wuss at all.
Oh, she should have jumped in the river. This is not going anyplace. Can you see this?
Goodness.
And usually when you just keep going, voices rise. They get louder and louder. And you end up shouting with each other. That's called an argument. So that's something, that's a conversational knot that results in people being very frustrated and disappointed.
Well, yes.
Okay. So here's one that I think makes a lot of sense.
All right.
It can be uncomfortable, but with my client who interrupts a lot with ADD, impulsive, excitable, everything is an emergency, what I've learned to do is address it head on. I address it head on. So for example, you have to be firm and direct without being rude. Firm and direct without being rude. So for example, I might say to my client, I value what you're thinking, but right now I'd like to finish my thought. So can you hold it just for about 30 seconds until I finish my thought? I would appreciate that.
I like that very much.
Okay, now what I've done is, I wasn't blunt and rude. You want to be blunt and rude, you just say something. Will you just shut up? Just shut your goddamn mouth. You're always interrupting. You never give me a chance to finish my thought. Just shut the fuck up. Okay.
I've heard people do that.
Yeah, that's addressing it head on, but that's
rude.
That's another no.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yes.
So addressing it head on is being firm. And I was reading in the Times this Sunday about dealing with people who have Asperger's, a little autistic, that they don't pick up subtle cues in communication. So sometimes being real direct with them. I know you're really excited. I want to hear what you have to say. Hold up your hand, like a stop, like a cop saying, stop to the traffic. I just want to finish my thought. Bear with me. Hang in there.
Okay.
And you
so
smile.
you're being understanding
Yes.
of their need to speak.
Right.
And their sense of pressure, like internal pressure they're probably feeling to share whatever it is they have in their mind.
Right.
But you're setting a clear boundary.
You're managing it. Yes, you're setting a boundary.
Right.
Rather than assuming that person should know how to listen. Most people don't listen very well. Okay, the statistics show that if you and I are having a conversation, for average, when you leave the room, if one of our colleagues says, "Oh, so what did Moss have to say? What did you understand what he had to say?" You might, if you're listening well, get maybe 60% of it, but within 24 hours, you're going to forget 40%. So in a day, you've lost, well, maybe you've got maybe 28 to 35% of what I meant to say. So
missing all those gems.
Oh my God, you know, in my mind, they're gems.
I know that.
And when you smile at me, ooh, it makes me feel so good. So anyway, we're not, human beings tend not to be good listeners. We could talk at another time about why that's so. But right now we're talking about this communication relationship, tangle or not, called identifying. And we've given you a number of strategies. One is to question the person. Tell me more about that. Oh, okay. Let it go. Just be silent and take a deep breath and kind of just relax. Another one is set expectations early. Let the person know what you want to do and see if they're willing to agree. You could just keep going, but that usually is like throwing gasoline on the flame.
Yes.
And I think the best one is address it head on. Be direct, be firm, but polite.
I agree with you.
Okay. All right, so good. That's our conversation on identifying. Now, I was wondering about, we have Thanksgiving coming up. All right, so we're going to probably talk next week, but I came across a couple ideas, and maybe we've squeezed the lemon of blocks to communicating. Maybe
You mean it's dry now?
maybe we've done a pretty decent job with that. Okay,
All right.
so I have a couple ideas.
Oh, what are they?
One is we could talk about 5 ways to live miserably. how people make yourself, how you make yourselves miserable. Okay, that might be an interesting one.
Oh, I'm sure it would be interesting.
The other one is we have 5 or maybe more habits of successful intimate partners. What do people who are well connected, doesn't have to be marriage, it could be business, it could be in the family, but they're well connected and they have positive habits that keep them from tangling and getting into knots. So I think during the next week, you and I will talk. Maybe what we'll do is at our Thanksgiving dinner at Jenny's house, our daughters, we'll watch people talking and seeing if they're making each other miserable, because often family time is a miserable experience for a lot of people. I don't think it's going to be so in our family, right?
What? Because it's my family.
Because it's your family. I don't want to create a problem. But we can listen for what are they doing that's making conversation successful.
Okay, I think that would be interesting.
And then we'll decide which one we want to do next week. In the meantime, do you have any final words?
I have no final words.
Except
goodbye. Enjoy Thanksgiving.
Yeah. Enjoy Thanksgiving. If someone is interrupting a lot or identifying, just take a piece of white meat or a drumstick and say, "Yeah, why don't you take a bite of this?" Kind of shove it in the mouth. Not a good idea.
That's a terrible strategy.
That's what I feel like doing now. In any case, thanks for listening, whoever's tuned in. If you like what we're talking about, hit like. Also, send this to other people. I think Judy and I think what we're providing you has real value, particularly if you listen to us. Anyway, be well. Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.